the YouTubers I want to thank: Sonic Channel, Anon7906, Not Your Usual Zero, Darkspine Sonic, and the main man himself, It'sNickForShort. So, Yuzora, what did you think about my venting? And, I like the suggestion, but I like this gives me more time to think of a plan. Yeah, I like the suggestion. Thanks, man. It's short for Nick. Okay, I'll see what I can make with it. First, let's start off with Sonic and the Black Knight story summary real quick. Sonic gets summoned to Arthurian legend to fight King Arthur, alright. With also some knights by his side. He claims Caliburn to fight these 3 knights with twists and turns along the way. But even then, he still saves the day. Now, that's a really simple story, right? With a few twists and turns, Merlina being the twist villain, and King Arthur being never existing at all. But let's talk about the main part of the story that it tries to hammer home. It's how you live your life. And we'll talk about it, especially with the 3 knights, for example, on how chivalry and loyalty isn't bad. It's just, it can be misguided. Now, let's see how the 3 knights of the round table show their loyalty towards King Arthur. True loyalty, questionable loyalty, and a mix between those two, which is just balance. Let's go with true loyalty for right now. That being Sir Lancelot right here, the strongest and second command of King Arthur. Not only is he never questioning King Arthur's motives and never doubts him, the other 2 at least have some pushback against him. He's the first one to lead this scene, showing how efficient he is, leaving right after King Arthur, and mentioning his mission to Sonic to find him, when the other 2 don't even mention it. Gawain just kind of stumbled upon Sonic, and with Sonic just trying to fight Percival so he could get her sword, so he could beat King Arthur. Out of all the knights, he's the not emotionless, but stoic. He's the most stoic, showing the least amount of emotion. You can see why King Arthur likes him the most. Not only will he never question him, he has blind faith in him. You can see why he was misguided. He's not a bad guy. He just trusts his king too much and never questions him. Now, let's go to questionable trust. Sir Gawain, Knight of the Round Table. Now, even though he was the first one to question his king's actions, he still is obedient, but he is shown to be the most independent, interrogating Sonic for no reason and jumping to assumptions. Now, like I said before, he still has loyalty towards his king and doesn't want failure. Let's compare this to Sonic, to where he's about to meet failure in his knighthood test, and he's not going to know how to stop King Arthur, but he's okay with that because he's helping a little girl, which he drops an important line saying he plays life by his own rules, which is a good contrast between him and Gawain right now, to where Sonic is alright with failure, but when Gawain's met with failure, he is so dependent by his king and his trust that when he fails it, he tries to kill himself, which is kind of harsh for him. It shows how dependent these knights are to their king. It really shows on how these guys don't matter without their loyalty to him. And also, out of the 3 knights, he's shown to be the most emotional. Lady Percival, the last of the Knights of the Round Table, as strong as she is noble, shows the second most trust in the king, saying we are nothing without the king's loyalty, but also showing the second most doubt. She strikes a good balance between this. She's also shown to be the most respectable, waiting for Sonic to come to her and giving him his knight name. Sadly enough, she would try to kill herself, or maybe it was just an accident. And also, she is shown to be the most caring, at least showing sympathy for Gawain when they see their kingdom in ruin. Now, even though we just finished this section on the knights, this next section will be much shorter since we're only talking about one character. Let's get into Little Miss Twist villain herself, Merlina. One thing I want to say about Merlina first is that she's the polar opposite of the knights. Not only she has no loyalty or chivalry unlike the knights, she also has no rule over her. Unlike the knights who have King Arthur giving them commands, she has nobody giving her commands. Unlike the knight, she is living life. She is not only manipulating everybody to do her bidding, she also has an active goal that she wants to actively destroy death and make everything eternal. And unlike the knights, she learns a different lesson, to where the knights had to learn that there's more to life than the king, right? She had to learn that you have to make the most out of life. Alright, now let's go over the main part, her boss fight. Thank you to Not Your Usual Zero for the clips that I'm about to show you right now.
Your selfishness is going to be the end of it all. Do you not understand?
I already told you, I don't mind playing the bad guy every once in a while. Everything must have its end, and we are going to be yours.
This line really shows how selfish Merlina is deep down inside, because not only is she asking for nobody else's input on this matter or whether she should do it, she also subtly implies that this may be another failure of the kingdom. But I won't go that far and like saying, oh, it is, because I'm still implying that at the end of the day. And also, this mostly comes out of her sorrow. Not only she doesn't want to try to fix the kingdom if that future does come, she just wants to actively avoid it. And this is mostly out of her sorrow.
Why can you not understand how magnificent an everlasting kingdom would be? You could never understand my sorrow at seeing the ruinous future of this kingdom.
Good, because I don't ever want to know such one-sided sadness. Foolish wizard, you're willing to sacrifice countless others just to escape your own sorrow.
This, along with other lines, really shows Merlina's main flaw as a whole, is that she's constantly trying to think about the future and not live life in the moment. When she's constantly thinking about the future, all it just does is make her more sad and miserable with life. Unlike Sonic and the Knights, right? Sonic, who's constantly living life in the moment and making the most out of the situation, is always happy in this story, right? He's actually helping people like Merlina, the little girl, and making friends with Caliburn and enjoying his trials of knighthood. Hell, even the three knights, even though they're not particularly living life like I said before, they're at least doing something that they actually do like, have chivalry and obey their king. Now, even though they do question it at times, some of them, right? They're at least doing what they want to do. Unlike Merlina, who's constantly miserable and letting her sorrow control her so much to where she just wants to destroy the kingdom to an extent. Final thing we're going to talk about is just Merlina's design. If you don't want to hear me yapper on about this, you can skip here. Anyway, let's go. I love the flower petals on her design. It fits with her flower theme, especially with the middle flower on her stomach right there. I also love how she gets her summoning circle on her skirt right there. And another thing I also love about her is how her hair became more wild, especially with how sharp it gets at the bottom. Especially with her getting some aspects of the scabbard with the brown and gold. The brown on her middle flower on her stomach and some of the gold on her sleeves. And also the gem on her head not only becomes purple this time instead of what it usually was, the red. And the yellow eyes that she has. And also another thing is how she becomes a lot more expressionless in this form. Especially compared to what she usually was. More expressive. The two final characters I'm going to talk about are Sonic and Caliburn. And mostly how these two are some of the best characters in this game, and they work so well off each other. But let's get into it. First, I love the dichotomy between Sonic and Caliburn. Caliburn's strict, cool head, Night Values is a good contrast between Sonic's jokey, high head, live lifestyle. It's a good balance, especially when Sonic is hyped up to have amazing sword skills. Caliburn puts him down just so he doesn't get a big head over it. And then they start to argue like hell. But these differences really does a good job at opening up their characters to have them bond. Like for example, right, to where Caliburn and Sonic are admiring the view of the landscape. How Sonic is confident to fight Percival, Caliburn tries to warn him about her, but Sonic then ends up complimenting Caliburn, which gets him flustered, which we don't usually see from him. He's pretty stoic, you know. And how Caliburn starts to joke around just like Sonic. Or how Sonic starts treating the night fights more seriously, like how with Lancelot he's just joking around saying, oh, I would love to flee. And with Gawain, right, now I know he starts acting civil after it, but he still does start calling him Knucklehead. But with Percival, that's when he starts acting seriously. He starts to copy the same stance that she's doing and what Lancelot tried to do to him. And this isn't even their best moment together, with the best moment being Caliburn getting cut in half, then Sonic quotes his dying friend, or, you know, his dead friend, saying, a knight never flees his foe, right? This really shows how good the friendship is. Finally, let's talk about the main man himself solo, Sonic the Hedgehog. He does a great job with what he is in this game. He's a good guy who just loves life and lives it his own way. I love the scenes to where he's like, okay, he's gonna help this little girl, even though he's gonna fail knighthood, but he plays by his own rules, so he's okay with failure. Or how he's just having fun in game, right? Just doing parkour and stuff. He does a good job of what he is given in this game, and is one of my favorite depictions of Sonic. Now, I haven't played a Sonic game in a while, right? But this is a really good depiction of the character. I really like him. And I also love how he has chivalry. Even though he's not about chivalry, he still shows traits of it even before his test of knighthood. He shows courage by fighting King Arthur even though he doesn't know what's going on. He shows compassion with helping Merlina even though he doesn't know her. And he shows great strength by beating all of King Arthur's minions. It really does show that this guy is a cool guy. Now, I don't know what else to say about Sonic, but I just really love the character. So yeah, I guess this ends the Sonic section. Sorry that the section isn't over. One more example is how Sonic breaks down a statue during his trial of knighthood and he's just having fun and laughing about it, saying, sorry, I didn't re-record the whole thing. I just really don't know what to say and I don't want to stutter over my words too much. I really like the recording I did. So yeah, sorry, but yeah, now the Sonic section is over. And the Black Knight's gameplay is really fun, with its emphasis on speed, with Sonic's main thing. With the Soul Surge, you get a big burst of speed, which allows you to pass through some obstacles, which is good for how hard it is to see Sonic and everything around him when he's moving so fast. And how there are obstacles on the ground to halt your speed, which forces you not to spam the Soul Surge speed, and the slash, so you can keep the speed and attack at the same time, if you have enough bar though. But they add a little more depth to this system with the perfect hit, which you can keep the same amount of bar you had when slashing, but it doesn't drain as much, which is a great way to reward the player for going out their way to find such a little mechanic. Next we have the combo swing as a fast option for Sonic without any soul gauge, for how it locks on the enemies and just goes straight to them to combo them, with it being instant, and it's nice to use with how much you have to shake the Wii remote, and you need enemies in front of you unlike the soul gauge. Good for a quick way to kill enemies and travel and enemies are in a line. Finally, the bosses in the game. They really do a good job at separating an average player from a skilled player. Now, let's talk about the implementation of the perfect hit in some of the boss fights, right? And how it's hidden, because unlike the overworld, there is no tutorial saying, oh, perfect hit challenge. Like there is no boss that says, oh, use the perfect hit on them. No, it's fairly hidden, especially in the King Arthur boss fight, so let's go with that first. This separates an average player from a skilled player. For example, let's use Sonic channel and Darkspawn Sonic's channel in our Dark Queen boss fight, for example. Darkspawn used the perfect hit to beat the boss with less soul gauge and did it in 22 seconds. Now let's talk about Sonic channel. They used more soul meter, was forced back, and used more meter and finished in 1 minute and 26 seconds. This is without the perfect hit strategy. It does a good job at showing and rewarding the players that if you go out your way to find these mechanics, you can not only beat these bosses really fast and with a lot of skill. Finally, I want to mention the dragon boss fight in the cave. You pay attention to Caliburn's line, then you get to finish the fight not only safer, faster, and you don't have to worry about getting knocked off the head. It's a nice bit of depth in the fight to where it's cool using the environment to your advantage. Thank you, Spawning Sonic, for the next video. Now it's time for the review or the response to It'sNickForShort's video on the magic of Sonic and the Black Knight. We'll go over the bads for right now, then the goods for later, since it's mostly a positive video.
Talk about how from a narrative analysis perspective, Sonic fulfills his role to a T, and the rest of the story is equally as well executed. But I'm going to do so as we move along in the plot summary because I don't think there's a single aspect that deserves to be glossed over.
First thing I don't like about this video is how he's talking about the story as if you were playing the video game. I wish he branched off into different characters individually. Like Merlina, for example, he really likes this character with this right here.
That is why she is one of my favorite characters in the entire series.
And it sucks to see that he gave her a little time in the video, especially with 14 minutes and 34 seconds where he starts talking about her, and it ends at 15 minutes and 9 seconds. Not enough time to talk about a character. I especially love the example where he points out that she has a fear of death, right? With her just calmly putting the flower to her face and saying grandfather. Now that's a good example, right? But I wish she brought up more, especially since he liked this character. Now, he could also use this from the boss fight to possibly make his argument stronger.
You could never understand my sorrow at seeing the ruinous future of this kingdom.
Now, whether that makes his argument stronger or not is something I have to interpret because he doesn't give any more examples. Now, I wish he did use some stuff from the boss fight because there is some stuff of interest there that I wish he did talk about. Now, that's my main problem with the story part of the video, that he just goes over the story as like you were playing the video game. Now let's get on to some other stuff.
But we aren't. We're looking at junk food as a gameplay style, and frankly, I think that's kind of perfect for this game.
Now I don't like this because not only is he hand-waving some criticism for this game, right, for himself honestly, but still he's just hand-waving it saying it's perfect for this game, especially with the reasoning he gives later, which I'll show right now.
I think that's kind of perfect for this game. Now the game would 100% feel and most likely would be more substantial if my critiques were fixed, but considering the extremely short runtime, I think this game feels more than dense. Dense with a phenomenal story, with fast-paced gameplay with some of the coolest set pieces in the franchise.
Now, like I said before, I don't like how he's hand-waving his criticism for the game just because the game's really short. If he has flaws with the game's gameplay that I wish he was more outward about and didn't kind of block it with like, okay, the game's fairly short though. He does bring up good examples and good flaws with this game, but I wish he didn't say it was perfect for this game. If he feels like the game can be better, then I wish he did outright say it. Now let's go on to something else.
The fast and stylish gameplay masks the lack of depth in the gameplay. I'd argue that there is depth in this gameplay, but...
Now this is a weird gray area because he's bringing up that the game does have depth, and he would argue that there is, so I like that, right? And I do agree with him. But it's weird how he's not bringing up that extra depth, right? Because there is some. Like, for example, the perfect hit mechanic in the boss fights, how you can use a perfect hit from the soul gauge to clear a boss fight out faster, and how the literal boss fight he's showing has depth to where you can knock the pillar on the dragon. And finally, the good section.
Round table. But the problem is how late into the game this is. The game never explains what these items do, let alone their purpose, because the blacksmith is criminally underused.
Now, even though I put it in the bad section, this guy is really good at criticizing the game. I forgot the identification system, and this guy reminded me of it, and he did a good job at explaining on why it is bad, right? I don't personally hate it, but still, I don't think it's that good. So I'll actually put it in my rant video, even though I kind of finished it. But yeah, let's go on to the next positive. This guy's starting off strong.
Holy Sword Caliburn and later Excalibur, he's very much so, like I said, by the books. He believes in chivalry, all of the classic medieval knights' values. He very much has different values than Sonic. Although they both want to do the right thing and stop King Arthur, Caliburn would much rather do things the knightly way. And that's where Sonic comes into play. He doesn't care about chivalry, honor, any of that knightlyhood stuff. All he cares about is doing what's right to help save other people.
And this is another thing I like about him. He does a good job at summarizing the characters better than I can do, right? Not only he does a good job at summarizing the relationship and summarizing Caliburn, saying that he is by the books and would rather do things the knightly way, and classifying Sonic as not having chivalry and just wanting to do what he thinks is right to help people. That's a good way of summarizing these two in this type of way. Something I did struggle with, and I haven't finished my story section on them as well. Overall, with the video of the magic of Sonic and the Black Knight, I give it a clean 7 or 6, right? It has some really good aspects to it. Like I said, the character summarizing and the way he criticized some things. I do think it's a good video. Or I'll try to watch it again. But that's my overall thoughts on it for right now. It's a good video and it does have some good stuff in it. There's some bad stuff obviously, but still. I definitely had a more favorable impression on the video. So, I guess this is the ending of my video then. Well, that's all I gotta say. Alright, it's time to end the video. Goodbye, I'm just gone.